only have to ask a stupid question once. You ask a stupid question, and if you're in a crowd and you ask a stupid question, 80% of people in the crowd have the same question. They're just too cowardly to ask, but you ask, and then someone actually tells you you never have to ask the question again. You're no longer stupid. What stupid thing am I doing that I could quit doing? That I would quit doing? Because those aren't the same thing, right? Because you know there is a stupid thing that you're doing that you're just not going to quit doing because you like them. But there might be something on the edge there where you could stop that. If you want to know something about yourself, sit on your bed one night and say to yourself, you gotta mean this. You gotta be desperate. This is no game. This is my life. My life is not everything I want it to be. And perhaps it's not everything that I need it to be. And by need, I mean my life is so unbearable that's suffering, that's attendant upon, that has made me nihilistic, cynical, bitter, resentful, driving the proclivity to see evil everywhere except within my own heart. These are problems, man. And you ask yourself, you sit on the bed and say, okay, man, I'm ready to learn something. What's one thing I'm doing wrong, that I know I'm doing wrong, that I could fix, that I would fix? It's like you meditate that. You will get an answer, and it won't be one you want, but it'll be the necessary one. And it's often something that will point you to a small thing, like that works. You start making those micro improvement, like real micro improvement, real on the ground. Actual micro improvement to thing you know that you're wrong. You will improve unbelievably rapidly. The great people I know are brutally truthful to themselves and other people, and they have insanely adventurous lives. Get rid of everything you say that you only say to impress other people, and just see if you can say what you believe to be true. That's an adventure. That's the thing about the truth. Well, you gotta ask yourself, if you're not speaking the truth, who is it that's talking? If you're saying something that you do not believe to be true, it's not you talking. It's something else. It might be the part of you that wants to manipulate the other person into delivering what you think you want from them. Well, what is the sprint of manipulation that you've allowed to possess you? It's not you. Let's say you decide to live your whole life in that instrumental manner. You're gonna craft your words like the student who says, well, I'm gonna write what the professor wants to hear so I get the grade. It's like, well, it's not you because those aren't your words. So even if you get the grade, it's not you that got the grade. It's false you. It's the manipulative you. So you do that your whole life. So you don't have your life. And then you think, well, God, that was a miserable life. I manipulated everybody. They were so damn stupid. They were sucked in by it. All contemplable. Everyone does it, which they do not. By the way, and so that's a pathway to bitterness. Partially because if you're a manipulator and you use your language falsely, you do not live your own life. You live the life of whatever possesses you. When you think it's you manipulating. And so you live the life of sprint of manipulation. Your ambition, if you have any sense, it actually to become contempt. Do you want to become contempt, confident, and dangerous? Or do you want to be vague or useless? It is definitely the case that there is no more exceptional from the capacity to be dangerous than to be articulate. And so it's a moral endeavor in some real sense to become articulate, to become the master of your own tongue. Every advantage comes with a disadvantage. So if you're extroverted, you're social, or you're positive, but you're impulsive, and you can tilt toward Hinduism, and you cannot stand being alone. No matter where you land in temperamental landscape, you're gonna have your associated fault and temptations. You got a goal. You will see that as you progress toward the goal, there will be obstacles that emerge, and some of them you do not want to confront. That's why it's useful to order your room. Chaotic room make you anxious. Why? Too many pathways, man. People do not really repress the thing they do not want to face. They just fail to unpack them. You want a horizon of ever-expanding possibility. We're built to walk uphill, and when you reach the pinnacle of hill, you want to stop and appreciate the vision. But the next thing you want is a higher hill in the distance. Be aware of unintended consequences. It's like, oh no, the thing will just do what I wanted to do and nothing else. It's like, no. It turns out that not only is what you want from each other the real thing, but that's also the adventure of your life. And so if you aren't truthful? And that means, unfortunately, especially at the beginning, when you start to be truthful, it means deeply coming to terms with your own inadequacies in humility. So it's very painful. Without that, you have the adventure of your life. You have the role that you've acquiesced to. And that's all take all the meaning out of your life. It's good for you to go take your place in the world, have some ambition, have vision, have goal, have a strategy, try to be a good person. Not because it's your duty precisely, because that's the proper way to live. You sit on the bed and say, okay man, I'm ready to learn something. What's one thing am I doing wrong that I know I'm doing wrong that I could fix it? You meditate on that, you will get the answer. You grow in preparation to the weight you take on voluntarily. And also true that we have no idea what the upper limit to that is. It's from the uphill climb that we derive our value, and I mean this technically. So almost all the positive emotion we feel, especially the emotion that fills us with enthusiasm, and that's experienced in relationship to a goal. And so in some sense, you want a goal that you can never attain, so you can always move closer to the goal that recedes as move towards it. You think, well, that's frustrating. It's like Sisyphus pushing the rock uphill. But it's not because as you pursue the goal, you put yourself together and your life doesn't get better and greater and more abundant. That's why the highest level of virtue and goal are in the same case transcended. You want them to be above everything you're doing, so you can continually move forward something that's more sublime and better. That's what you are. You're here to live, not to slip. And the problem with the vision of my ties on the bench is that, well, first of all, that's vision of self-drug induced unconsciousness. Second, it's only gonna work for about a week. Third, you're gonna be laughing stock in a month and depressed and aimless and goalless. No, that's not. You want a horizon of ever expanding possibility. And so it does happen to people because they've sacked their soul on the attainment of instrumental goal. And it can be a pretty high order goal, but then you think, now I'm there. Now what? Well, the answer can be, well, I'm gonna live in the lap of luxury and never have to leave the face. What do you want to be? A giant infant with a gold battle? You never have to do anything but lay in the bag and stop. It's like you see the problem with that as a conceptualization. It's no. You want to be like an active warrior moving uphill with your sword in hand, and that's dynamic, that's exciting. People are afraid of the truth because often if you reveal it, it causes conflict in the moment. Telling the truth is definitely an adventure, seeking for sure, but also telling. Another way of going about is to just say what you think and see what happens. That's an adventure because you do not know what the outcome is gonna be. Look, there is this old idea that's necessary to have faith in the truth. Here is a way of thinking about that. Someone asks you a question and you might think, well, here is the outcome I want, and so here how I'm gonna answer the question. That's one way to approaching it. But another way of approaching it is, you ask me a question, I'm gonna think about the answer, and I'm just gonna tell you what I think. It doesn't matter what the outcome is because I'm willing to see what the outcome will be. Predict it on the idea that there is a better outcome than the one that truth produces. Even if it's harsh and terrible in the long term, and sometimes it's like there isn't a better way of doing it now. You might say, well, how do you know that? The answer is, well, I don't know that. That's why it's an article of truth, because I believe, and I believe this deeply. The being that you produce as a consequence of telling the truth is good by definition, even though it's harsh and often uncomfortable, because you get this trouble. One of the things that I've really learned recently and learned to articulate better is that there is a very tight relationship between inspiration and responsibility. The first question might be, do you want to aspire to something? And the answer is, well, yes, because you have to do something. If you just sit there, you'll die. You cannot just sit there. You have to go act out in the world. Okay, act toward what? Well, that whatever your aspiration is, you have to have a name. Okay, well, what should the aim be? Well, it should be something worth doing. Let's say, why do something that you do not feel is worth doing? What do you think is worth doing? Well, if you watch other people and you judge when they're doing something worthwhile, you usually judge them positively if you see that they're taking responsibility, at least for themselves. But do you want to be completely useless to other people? have to take care of you? That's pretty pathetic. Maybe you could get your act together so you're taking care of yourself and your family. Maybe you could even be better than that and take care of yourself and your family and your community. Well, good for you. That's responsibility and that's an aim. Well, here is one of the things that's cool about is that your life doesn't have meaning without inspiration and your aim. Okay, so you need a hierarchy of values. There is got to be something at the top. It's gotta be something important. If you do not have that, your life doesn't have any meaning. So if you criticize the hierarchy or even the idea of hierarchy, you destroy the idea of inspiration. And then people have nothing. Well, that's not helpful. People are built for a struggle and they're built for a weight. And you want to take on a heavy burden voluntarily. See if you can put yourself together. See what you can do out in the world while you're waiting to die. It's an all-in game. It's better to be worthwhile a while. If you gaze into abyss long enough, you see the light, not the darkness. I'm betting my life on it. Bring it on, the adventure along the route, man. I would say, what's that adventure to be found? You don't want something else fake, mom. Your fate's enough, and your adventure is enough. It's plenty. It's more than you can never fully realize. And so that's also part of the reason that we all believe that the individual has some intrinsic dignity. It is. Don't be so sure that your position and your room is damn trivial. Might be your attitude toward it's trivial. And if you're dire straits and dire circumstances, you look at how much opportunity you have to make things better. Well, maybe the same things is true of life, right? You bind yourself to do that, and the tighter you bind yourself to it, the more you find out what it is. And that's like a radical embrace. We're built to walk uphill, and when you reach the pinnacle of the hill, you want to stop and appreciate the vision. But then the thing you want is a higher hill in the distance, because it's from the uphill climb that you derive out our value. Almost all the positive emotion we feel, especially the emotion that fills us with enthusiasm, the experience in relationship to a goal. And so, in some senses, you want the goal that you can never attain. There is nothing that makes you more formidable than verbal competence, than being able to articulate, be able to think, to marshal your arguments. Aim yourself in one direction. You might say, well, I've gone halfway down this path and I found out it's wrong. Or how do you distinguish that from just giving up? Well, that's really hard question. It's moral hazard. But then the absolute is, yes, but you have to play one of them. You have to learn to play one of them. You have to become an expert at least one of them. That's not a relative proposition. I believe that's true. You want to commit to something. Then when you commit to something, you require yourself to bring all your disparate components, moving in a single direction, unite in single direction. So it's a unifying act. There is a lot of things you could be bothered by, like a million things, man, but something grip you. They bite you, and they might make you resentful or better because they bite you so much. They're your things, man. They've got you. So then I look for a question that I would like to answer. I would really like the answer to it. So I do not assume I really have the answer, because I would actually really like to have the answer. So if I could get a better answer, great. That's first thing, and that's like a prayer. It's like, okay, here is the mystery. I would like to delve into it further. That's humility. It's like, here is the mystery, which means I don't know. Would like to delve into it further, which means I don't know enough already. Then comes the revelation. It's like, well, what's the revelation? Well, if you ask yourself the question, it's a real question. Do you get an answer or not? The answer is, well, yes. Thoughts start to appear in your head from somewhere. That's right. Let's say you want to become who you could be in the fullest sense. So let's say you're someone who's gonna solve some serious problems. The first thing you have to do is to admit the seriousness of the problem. That's not joke. So the first thing is just the terror of the problem itself, and then enough to paralyze you. And that's the Georgian with the head of the snake. I'll paralyze you and turn you to stone. That's the basilisk in the Harry Potter series. You look at it and turns it to stone, and it lurks underneath everything, and it's malevolence and tragedy. And so there is that. And then the next thing is, well, you're gonna take responsibility for that? You're really gonna do that, aren't you? That's hell of load, man. And so it's daunting to even consider it. And then there is the discipline and responsibility that necessitates, which is also that daunting. It's like, oh my god, the problem is that's serious? I'm really gonna have to get my act together in order not to contribute to it, much less solve it. And so the problem is terrible, and then the solution is daunting. But the upside of that is like, well, there isn't anything better to have than a problem that's worth solving. That's really, it's worth anything. And so the more of that you take on, the more you have a reason to get out of the bed in the morning. No matter what, I'm getting up, I'm trudging forward. It doesn't matter what I'm suffering from. I've got things that need to be done. They're necessary. That gives you that its purpose, that is antidote of bitterness. Okay, well, let's say you wanted your life to be meaningful. It is like, okay, what matters? It actually matters. So that's an interesting thing. Well, so let's say you go over your past with a fine-tooth comb and you decide you're gonna take responsibility for everything that you did was wrong and everything that you failed to do it that you could have done that was right. Look, that's changed the world. It's like it depends on how truthfully you do it. You might say it changed the world like nothing else possibly can, and I think that's actually right. You have to allow yourself to certain latitude for error, and that's a useful thing to know too. One of the things I tell people when they're trying to develop a vision of their life is, or a implementable plan, is to make a bad plan. Make the best one you can, but don't get obsessive about it. It's like make a plan, implement it. You figure out when you implement it why it's stupid. Exactly. And then you can fix it in a little bit. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday and not who someone is today. The same basic idea, right? Is that you have to get your marker for success right, because otherwise you can end up in those situations you described, which is that, like, there is always people out there who are doing far better than you on pretty much anything you want to imagine. And if all you're doing is seeing yourself in the reflected light, let's say, then it's gonna be pretty damn dismal. But it's not good comparison, because you shouldn't just compare. Well, first of all, there is a danger in just comparing yourself to others, period, because they're not you, and God only knows what struggles they had to undertake to get to where they were, or what burdens they're currently carrying that you're not aware of. You just do not know any of that, but you can certainly contrast yourself with yourself, and that's a lot better. It is the only way. Well, it's also the only way of really measuring anything approximating proper improvement. You can actually tell when you're a little better than you were yesterday, and then you can actually do that. That's another thing that's so interesting about it, is that you can actually make yourself a little better in some way, pretty much. Well, I don't know if it is every moment, but you can certainly do it every day. It's funny. I mean, obviously, if you have a problem and you think about it, you can think of a situation and solution, and it's not obvious how do you do that. I mean, it's not like you know how you're manipulating your nervousness or something. It happens of its own accord in some sense. Like you can participate in that, I guess, and you can't interfere with it. And it does seem it can take a certain amount of willpower, but still it happens mysteriously behind the scenes. One of the things that I've been, so here is the lots of different ways to interpret the world, and you can maybe even make case that there is a tremendous number of ways to interpret the world. The problem with that is this orients you in terms of what you should be doing. But just because there is a very large number of ways to interpret the world doesn't mean there is a very large, productive, meaningful, and sustainable way to interpret the world. And one of the things you do have to is figure out how do you conduct yourself today, and then you do not upset the apple cart in the week, month, or year. And so what you do in our sense psychologically is you admit to yourself that your current frame of reference is faulty, and then you start opening the door to differentiate thinking, which is more creative thinking. It's more lateral thinking. Say, well, I'm wrong, and that's not necessarily a problem, because I could be right if I thought some other ways. Well, that's great. Often it works. There is almost no luck. There is almost no end to the utility of trying to figure out which ways you're wrong, because there is lots of them. Every time you discover one, then you do not have to be quit so wrong anymore. That's really good idea. What's your time worth? You're a university student, well, certainly worth minimum wage, because obviously, but it is worth way more than that, because if you spend a productive hour when you're 20, then you gain the benefits of that hour the rest of your life. That's the compounding effect of time you spend when you're young. I say, well, let's assume your time is worth $50 an hour, which I think is an underestimate, but whatever, let's call it 50 and it's called 25, but we'll call it 50. Is that to thousands a week you're wasting? It is 100,000 a year. It's like, how much better world would your life be if you weren't wasting 100,000 a year? The Da Vinci Code, everyone liked that. It sold a lot. It was full of article mysterious, and it was full of hints that there was more than world that you think. That's definitely true. There was a way of getting access to that knowledge, and then it would really be worthwhile. People like that. They like that idea. The reason for that is because it's actually true. Learn to write. I'm dead serious about that, because writing is formalized thinking. The way you write is, first of all, you need to problem. Why write if you do not have the problem? This is a good advice. If you're just writing an essay, by the way, for a class, it's like pick a bloody problem that you want to write about, because otherwise it's false right from the start. It's up to you to engage with the material until you find something that grips you, that you desire to investigate. You need a problem, the next thing you need to do. Well, you need to have something to say about the problem. Reading is really good for that. Read as much as you can. Get your hands on the address the problem. Okay, so now you know a bunch of things, and at least professionally know them. You at least have access to them well. Now you start sorting throughout. It's like, okay, well, maybe I need summarize that I learned, and then I need to iron out the contradiction between what you learn. I need to elegantly formulate that. I need to get my word choice right, and my phrase choice right, and my sentence choice right. And I need to organize the sentence into proper paragraph, and the paragraphs into proper sequences, so that I have coherent argument. At the same time, what you're doing is you're integrating your own personality at the highest and the most abstractive level of organization, and you're sharpening your tools that you're putting yourself right, because you're learning to think. You learn to do that by writing. Many years you have your words. The most powerful thing about you, bar none. If you're an effective writer and speaker and communicator, you have all the authority and competence that there is. And so you're at university, maybe you are taking a humanities degree. Well, what's the humanities degree is for? It is teach you about how to think. You learn to think by writing. Now there is more to read, to speak, all of that. But the best thing you can do is real and write every day, a couple of hours every day. Write about things you find important and see if you can discover what you believe to be true. And that will build you a foundation. And it's unbelievably practical. If you look at the people who are fundamentally successful across life, there is various reasons, but one of them is that they're unbelievably good at articulating what they're aiming at, to strategizing and negotiating and enticing people with a vision forward. It's like, get your words together, man. That's make you unstoppable. That's the core of humanity, that idea. It gets your words together. Make yourself an articulate creator, and then you're deadly in the best possible way. Take that strategy. The best thing you can do is teach people to write, because there is no difference, because that's thinking. One of the things that you just blows me away about university is that no one ever tells students why they should write something. It's like, well, you have to do this assignment well. Why are you writing? Well, you need to grade. It's like, no, you need to learn things about something, because thinking makes you act effectively in the world. Thinking makes you win the battles you undertake. Those could be battle for a good thing. If you can think and speak and write, you're absolutely deadly a creator. Nothing can get you in your way. That's why you learn to write. It's like, why I can't believe that people aren't just told that. It's like, it's the most powerful weapon you could possibly provide someone with. I know lots of people who've been staggeringly successful and watched them throughout my life. Those people, you do not want to have an argument with them. They'll just slash you into pieces. basis and not in a malevolent way. It's like if you're gonna make your point and they're gonna make their point, you better have your points organized, because otherwise you're gonna look and be an absolute idiot. You're not gonna get anywhere. The truth of the matter is that you have a lot of potential as a child, but none of this is capable of manifesting itself as a freedom before you become disciplined. Discipline is a matter of impositioning of order, and the order is necessary, especially for people who are hopeless or nihilistic. And what does it mean? Well, it does mean just I hate getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning to get ready for work. This just means you're not very disciplined. Or maybe that might mean something deeper, but I assert the lack of discipline before rearranging your whole life, because you might say, well, I hate getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning no matter what I'm doing, and then it's not your job. I do not mean do not do difficult things. I mean, watch yourself, and if you see that you're doing things that make you hate yourself, then consider the cost of continuing. If something's valuable, you will make sacrifice to attain it. That discovery of sacrifice, I think that's what separates a human. It's one of the primary factors separating human things from animal, because we discovered that we could let go of something we could value in the present and would gain something we value even more in the future. Lay a disciplinary structure on yourself, get the chaos in check, and then you can move toward a state that's freer because it's disciplined first. If you're gonna become a concert pianist, there is gonna several thousands of hours extraordinarily disciplined practice. That's the imposition of order on your potential, let's say. But what comes out of that is much grander freedom. And so in the virtual very freedom that you have in life, that truth freedom is purchased at the price of disciplinary. That's not some casual self-help doctrine. It is that if you do not organize yourself properly, you will pay for it, and in a big way. So will the people around you. I would say start where you can start. If something announces itself to you as in need or repair that you could repair, then hey, fix it. You fix it 100 things like that, your life will be a lot different. Now, I often tell people to fix the thing you repeat every day, because people tend to think of those as trivial. You get up, you brush your teeth, you have your breakfast, you have your routines that you go through every day. Well, those probably constitute 20% of your life. People think, well, the mundane, I don't believe and I don't need to pay attention to them. It's not. No. That's exactly wrong. The thing you do every day, those are the most important thing you do, hands down. Well, there isn't anything better to have than a problem that's worth solving. That's really worth solving. The more of that you can take on, the more you have reason to get out of the bed in the morning. No matter what, I'm getting up, I'm trudging forward. It doesn't matter what I'm suffering from. I've got things that need to be done that's necessary, and that gives you the sense of purpose. That in the antidote of bitterness, there is a lot of reason to, because I've thought for a long time. Imagine you have a choice in front of you, because you do. So here is the choice. Your life is either meaningful or meaningless. So let's go through the meaningless part first, because you think, well, of course I don't want to be meaningless. It's like, yeah, just hold on a second. Nothing you do matter. It's the same as the first. Impulsive pleasure is the order of the day. No responsibility. You can do whatever you want. It's like Pleasure Island in Pinocchio. It's like Neverland in Peter Pan. You're still a kid. You can play all the time. Impulsive pleasure and no responsibility. That's reward for meaninglessness. But then the other side is, okay, well, let's say you want your life to be meaningful. It's like, okay, then what do you matter? It actually matters. You make a mistake, hurts you, hurts your family, hurts the world a deeper way than you think. And you have to be awake of that. And then you have to take it on yourself. So you're at a particular stage right now, and that stage would involve a particular worldview and behaviors to get along with that. So the perception and behavior, it's not enough because you haven't mastered the whole world and you're making mistakes all the time. And then your other neurological mechanism, so maybe that's more left hemisphere phenomenon. It's instantiation of that identity. Then there is right hemisphere mechanisms that are taking your errors and keeping track of them. And the mechanisms that are tracking your errors, and the error are the indication that your theory is incomplete. So the errors accumulate, and the information around the errors accumulates, and another identifies start to become formulated, and it solves the problem your previous identity did, but also some additional ones. When you have an aha moment, like it's the manifestation of the next identity that's making itself known, but because it's being built from the bottom up, it isn't explicit yet, then you will encounter the explicit statement you mentioned a couple there, and they map onto that, and that the aha, it's like, oh yes, that's what ties together things together that I've been wrestling with in the lack of my minds. Someone made it explicit, and that's one of the great things about language that can also help fit the gaps too, because you can start to make argument based on that observation that I have. That's the manifestation. Imagine that the world was constituted so that the true adventure of your life emerged as a consequence of truth in speech and action, because that would be reflective of the real you. So it would be you living, and then imagine that the adventure that world occur if you delve into the truth would be so overwhelming that it would justify all the suffering. We're built to walk uphill. When you reach the pinnacle of the hill, you want to stop and appreciate the vision, but the next thing you want is a higher hill in the distance, because it's high climb, that it's from of the uphill climb that we derive our value. And I mean this technically. So almost all possible emotion we feel, especially the emotion that fills us with enthusiasm, that is experienced in relationship to a goal. And so in some sense, you want a goal that you can never attain, so you can always move closer to that goal that recedes as you move toward. You think, well, that's frustrating, it's Sisyphus pushing the rock uphill. It's like that, because as you pursue the goal, you want yourself together, and your life does get better and richer and more abundant. That's why the highest level of virtue and goal are in some sense transcendent. You want them to be above everything. You're doing that, you can continually moving towards something that's more sublime and better. That's what you are. You're here to live, not to slip.